Good morning. How you doing, Amanda?
I'm great. How are you, Taylor?
Pretty good. We're starting a little late because I was struggling with some audio things. What else is new? Um, but other than that, I'm good. I have pretty delicious coffee this morning,
Oof,
and feeling
jealous.
pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to cut down to 1 cup a day, and
Uh, I hope you mean like one cup, right? Not like literal 8 ounces, or do you
not
mean
eight
eight
ounces.
ounces? Okay.
I'm like 12 ounces.
Okay. That's I
Pretty.
could see it. I don't know if I could do it.
I don't want to do it, but here we are.
It's real bad, especially now that the school year has started. Because I'm used to just brewing a whole pot of coffee, and then like my wife will have like 2 cups, and I'll have a stupid amount of the pot. And now it's like I brew the whole pot, and it's just me. So I need to adjust my habits. I am typically now doing 6 cups, but French coffee cups. So that's 5 ounce cups. So
Okay.
30 ounces. Still too much though. So
Well, we all need something.
yeah. Anyway, that's our coffee talk. Hope for everyone enjoyed that. Yeah. So we're here to chat about creating a radio station today.
Yes.
It's timely-ish for us, although it was a couple weeks ago. But the reason we wanted to do this was coming off of our DS106 Radio Summer Camp, which was so fun. And I continue to be really thankful for everyone who participated in that, because the energy that both the folks who ran sessions and like did audio production, but also just everyone who was hanging out in Discord, it was great. It was immaculate. It was better than I could imagine. So that was so fun. And coming off of that, we thought it would be kind of fun to talk tech a little bit on the radio stuff and how you could potentially have your own radio station if you wanted one, with not too much effort. So, yeah. I see Mark mentioned a error message on Discord on Reclaim TV. Oh yeah, sometimes that little embed thing that runs our Discord chat on Reclaim.tv is weird. We use a third-party service that I don't love. I mean, I like that it exists, but I wish it worked better. So sometimes you just have to use the normal Discord app, Mark,
Ooh.
unfortunately. Yeah, I would love, we don't host it. I want something that we can host so that when it goes down, I can fix it. But that is not the case with that service. So
The
anyway,
empire is still being built.
yes, yeah, yes, indeed. So I will also mention too, if you missed summer camp, I mean, we posted this link a lot, but you can go to podcast.reclaimed.tech. I'll throw it in the channel. Although I'm positive everyone who's in the channel right now, Nomad Warrior Machine and Mark, know about this because they were there. But maybe someone else sees it. All of the recordings are here. We're not actually going to be doing Castopod today. This is the tool that's hosting these audio recordings and makes an RSS feed, because we did that. We did Castopod a couple weeks ago. And so if you're curious about Castopod, you can check that video out. Just go to archive.reclaim.tv, click on Castopod. We did a little exploration of that. I do want to revisit Castopod at some point, because that was a real quick, like, can we make this work kind of video?
Right.
And I would love to deep dive more. I've learned a few things about it, using it for this, but also I'd like to do more with it over time, and then maybe do a more like in-depth kind of Castopod thing. But yeah, if you're looking for those summer camp recordings, they're there. What we're looking at today is how you could make something like this. So this is the DS106 Radio homepage, I guess, the listen page. And although we won't be making these widgets, although that would be kind of cool. But if there's time, I will maybe pull back the curtain on how you could look at how those widgets work, because they're actually just JavaScript, so you can see all the code for it. But mainly this nice landing page with a player and a web-based radio station in general. We're going to talk about how you could make one, how you could host it, how you'd set it up, and even get into some nitty gritty details on how this page would work, depending on how much time we have. So, yeah. So, I guess we'll get started right away because we do have kind of a lot to cover, I think.
It seems so simple. It's so beautifully like simplistic, but probably takes a lot of jiggering.
It does and it doesn't, you know. So there's really two main things to know about, and that is one, you need something that can create and power an online radio station, and for that we're going to use AzuraCast. And then for this, so AzuraCast will get you 98% of the way there, but for DS106 Radio and for our own Reclaim Radio, and even my own little, I have a radio station I use like a few times a year for like D&D background music. You can tell that I've maybe done both of these because they look extremely similar. But it's nice to have like a cleaner landing page with a nice URL. So that is a little extra step that we're going to look at today, very briefly. I don't know if we'll do the full setup, but I'm going to show you the code that we use to do this, and kind of give you an idea of what that would mean. But we're going to do most of our focusing on AzuraCast today, which is really the meat of it. And this part is simply an iframe on a web page. So we'll talk about what we're doing here, but theoretically, if you have AzuraCast, you could put this little player, this is the AzuraCast part, this little box here, on any web page, you know, WordPress,
Nice.
multi-site, ghost blog, anything. So we're going to kind of go front to back on this. So here I've got I'm already logged into Reclaim Cloud. And I'm in my own account here. You can actually see my radio station here, which we may use as an example later on. But we're going to install a fresh one for today. So I'm going to go to the marketplace. I'm going to search for AzuraCast. It is right there, but you know, maybe you haven't already favorited it like I have. You can give it an environment URL, which will be the URL if you don't want to map a custom domain to it. This will be its URL. So if you are going to map a custom domain, you could keep this because no one will ever really see it. But I like to give it a nice name. It's just nice to differentiate in the list of environments. So let's call this our cool radio station. Got to go with my naming convention, right?
Original. Yes.
Yeah. We'll put it in the US East region. That's fine, but you could pick any region. And we'll hit install. And this will take a good chunk of time. So you probably, I know you, Amanda, have heard me say that after hitting the install button probably countless times on Reclaim TV. But this time I do mean it, especially because it's actually doing quite a bit. So it's a lot of these apps on Reclaim Cloud. What we do is we make an installer that simply gives you a Docker environment, so a Linux environment that has Docker ready to go. And then we basically download a single file, which is the Docker compose file. And then we run a single command, which says, hey, bring that compose file up. Run its instructions, basically, you know. This is a little bit different, and that's because AzuraCast is actually a pretty complicated internally piece of software. AzuraCast is kind of a big wrapper around like a bunch of different tools, and what the developer has done is made a really fantastic like Dockerized version of all of those, and then has a set of scripts to make it easy to start using, and then wrote a big web interface on top of all of it. It's honestly kind of an amazing project to me, especially given that I think it's mainly just one developer.
Yeah.
So if we look this up here,
because what are all the things that are happening?
Yeah. So it's a self-hosted all-in-one web radio management suite. The thing is, web radio, when you're not using a Zerocast, is actually kind of hard. You need more things than you'd expect. So let me go to the main website here and the documentation. But basically, what the stuff that a Zerocast is doing, right? So there's the web interface that's completely a Zerocast. That's a custom thing. But then the services it's using a service called IceCast, which is the thing that essentially encodes the radio stream. So basically, IceCast can receive audio and then make it MP3 audio that other folks can listen to. It's kind of like a web server, but for music, sort of.
Right.
But IceCast on its own can't like play music, or you have to give it audio to play, basically. And so that's not, the end of the world. Like when you use streaming software to connect to IceCast, it basically just takes that and kind of mirrors it, basically. It takes what you're giving it, and it basically re-encodes it to a different format, and then it sends it out. But the problem is what happens when you disconnect. When you disconnect, you don't want nothing. You don't want radio silence. It's usually people want to cut over to like maybe a music playlist that they've already set up, or maybe mirror another radio station. IceCast doesn't know how to do that. You need a separate piece of software to handle like playback of local music and like queuing up playlists and stuff like that.
That's what makes it radio-y.
Yes. And there's probably more parts to it than that, but those are the two biggest things. And they're honestly, speaking as someone who tried doing this without a Zerocast like years ago, because I just didn't know about a Zerocast at the time, it was a lot of setup and fiddling to get it to work. And even then, what I ended up with was something that like once a day I had to reboot because it just stopped working. So a Zerocast takes all these tools that are nice but kind of hard to work with, and packages them up and manages them for you in a really excellent way. And so if you go to the Zerocast website, they have little instructions on how to install it with Docker. And they basically say like, hey, make a folder, download this file, and then run this script. And this particular script that they have does a ton of stuff in Docker to set up the station. So that's why this is a long tangent to say that's why this takes a bit, because it's actually running a Zerocast's own install script, which takes a while. And of course, it's done now. So who knows how long it's been done? I probably should have kept it on screen, but it does take it takes a good 5 minutes to get this running. So it says, hey, your application has been deployed. I can go to the Zerocast URL and it'll say, great, welcome. It's going to make me make a admin account in a second. I'll also mention that we have a doc on doing a Zerocast. I need to change that link in these images. They are not working. That's no good. Well, I'll fix this doc up later. But some of the images are broken. So, so it covers how to install it on Reclaim Cloud. It covers how to set up a custom domain if you want that. We're not actually going to set up the custom domain today, but it's pretty simple to do. And it covers up, things like how you can restart the station if you want to, and some other things, some other more esoteric kind of things that you may need. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a admin account. So I'll put in my email address. I'm going to make a password. Password totally isn't just Reclaim for Life. And then it says, awesome, let's create a new radio station. So let's call this our cool radio station. And website URL. It should be the public front facing, not the user. Oh, this is like a metadata thing. So this is optional technically, or at least I believe it's optional. But you could put like, let's say your station was ourcoolstation.com, and then if you wanted to listen, you went to listen.ourcoolstation.com. You could put your main like organizations, if you had one, website right here. I'm going to leave most of this exactly the same. And then we do want to make sure, or exactly is at its defaults, we do want to make sure enable public pages is set here, because this is what enables the public streaming page. So we're going to need that. So leave that on. And on demand, we don't need. This is a new feature, but basically you can like upload playlists and then let people just listen to them, and then it's just, whenever they want. It's basically just playing back MP3s.
Oh,
It's kind of like Castopod, I suppose.
mm.
I haven't used it, but you could. So we're not. Typically, it's not what I think of as needed for a radio station, but
I wouldn't think so.
But it's a neat feature I'd love to check out at some point. So it says, hey, put in the site base URL. So for this, I'm going to use the actual Reclaim Cloud domain here. And we can give it an instance name. The station. Doesn't really matter what we use here. If we go to our instructions that have broken images, I wanted to say that because we're gonna be using endpoints for this, and I'll talk about why that is a little bit later.
Mark asks an interesting question in the chat that I was kind of thinking as well, which is, can that feature that we were just talking about kind of like replace Castopod?
I think it would somewhat replace it. I think what I figure, not having used the feature, so coach all of my answer in that because I haven't used it. But my guess is it doesn't do RSS podcast feeds, which is the main thing Castopod does, which is it will, sure, you can give it some MP3s, but you say, this is episode 1, this is episode 2, this is episode 3. Give it a title, all the metadata, and then it makes a feed which you could subscribe to in a podcast player. Yeah. I'm guessing Azuracast is more just like, throw some MP3s up and people can play them. So it's probably different only in that feed and metadata sense. But I don't know, maybe Azuracast can generate podcast feeds. I haven't actually tried it. This is what I was looking for here. So it says, if you're planning to use SSL or the Reclaim Cloud Shared Load Balancer, which we will, and I will talk about what that means, we need to make sure to use web proxy for radio is checked. So I'm going to check that. Whoops, that's the one I want. And then the rest of these I'll leave as normal. Complete a status process. Great. Oh, hey, it needs to begin with HTTPS.
Oh,
because it's a URL, not a domain name. Cool. Okay, so setup is done of the main software. There's a couple other things we're going to need to do. So when you get a Azuracast installation basically set up, at the main URL, and let me log out here. At the main URL, and this is kind of, there's not really anything there. Like if you try to visit just, in my case, ourcoolradiostation.us.reclaim.cloud, it's going to just redirect you and ask you to log in. And this is why, in many cases, we have this like special public page that we've made, because listeners can't actually go to this main URL to listen to your station. Yeah. That's where the whole thing lives. And that's just a choice that they made in how Azuracast works. And it makes some sense because Azuracast is designed to be able to even host multiple different stations. You can have multiple, it's kind of like a WordPress multi-site for radio in some ways. I have never used it that way, but you can have multiple different people administering their own little stations on Azuracast, theoretically.
Cool.
So it's neat. And the way that web radio works, it's somewhat lightweight. You know, like you're not gonna have. I'm kind of already walking back that sentence I just said, because Azuracast itself takes a decent amount of resources to run, but to host 2 radio stations versus 1 is probably not a big difference in terms of the processing power needed.
No, that makes sense. I mean, because you've got all that kind of initial setup, and then once that's like the bulk of it running, then you can kind of on different interface or just profiles or whatever.
Yeah, and it has a lot to do with what we were talking about before, of that like Azuracast is managing a lot of complexity for you. So there's like a ton of little Docker containers running inside this thing. It's not terrible. We're talking about 7 cloudlets, or my station that's been around for years is at 8 at the moment. So it's not like huge. I'm just saying it's also not like Ghost. Like Ghost on Reclaim Cloud will run on like 3 cloudlets, 3 to 5 a lot of the time. Yeah. So it's a little bit more than that. And you can even see that here. If I go in to the terminal for this and run a Docker PS, which shows us what Docker containers are running, normally you see like 2 or 3, and this is going to look insane. Oops, I just ran Docker instead of Docker PS. Sorry. In fact, it's a little bit broken. Okay, this output doesn't work in this small of a screen. These are all the ports it's opened. That's what that is. Oh, you know what? I'm totally wrong. They've changed this. It looks like it's really only 2 containers now. So that's interesting. They must have slimmed this down quite a bit. It used to be like 7 containers, which was kind of a lot for such a quote-unquote simple application. Anyway, so we have a thing here. We're logged into the dashboard. And I can scroll down. You can kind of see listeners per station. And this is what we were talking about, where it's designed so that you could have more than 1 station. And I'm going to go to manage. So I can go to our actual station we just made, which is called Our Cool Radio Station. And when I go in here, it says, hey, you could start radio. Nothing's happening just yet. And so I'm going to do that. Now, there won't be much actually.
So at this point,
happening.
Does a public page for this exist so that listeners can visit?
It does, but it's not playing anything. So let me go back to the main page here. And if I go to public page, I'm going to open that in a new tab. Here it is. So this is the public page. Now it's not going to do anything.
Right.
And I don't have my audio shared in, but if anyone, trust me, nothing is happening. And it says station offline. But this is the URL. It's ourcoolradiostation.us.reclaim.cloud/public/our_cool radio station. This works. It's just not a pretty URL, right? So let me go back into the dashboard here. I need to start the station. And so I've never, this reload configuration is new. I guess this would be for changing specific settings, but we're just going to hit restart broadcasting here. And then you can see I got a little progress bar at the top. And unless this has changed, what it will do is it will basically, what it will do is it'll start the station and it'll play like you're hearing Azuracast, kind of like a demo little piece of music.
Gotcha.
Let me go back to that public page. I wonder if there's a way from here to get to there. No, I can click on this. This just goes right to like the MP3 stream. I can hear it. That works. Oh, here's a link. Public page. This gets us back to where we were. Boop, boop, boop.
If it were working, would it pop up that the station's online? Would it update that?
It's still, so it's a little confusing. And this is exactly why we're doing a stream on this, because it can be a lot to deal with this stuff especially if you've never seen anyone do it. It's now playing a song called Station Offline. Very confusing. I'm not 100% sure why, but I can't actually get it to play on the main player, which is weird. But the stream is working. I can hear it in here, so that's interesting.
But it's not playing on the public page.
Yeah, I don't know what's up with that. It's maybe that could be an intentional choice because you wouldn't really want the public to ever hear this. Like, it basically just says, "Welcome, your radio station is set up." You know, like it doesn't. It's just like a little sample thing. So I'm going to assume that's an intentional choice. And again, you wouldn't ever really want the public page to play this anyway. So we're going to steamroll ahead and have it actually play something. So we're not going to dive into every single AzuraCast thing, obviously. But we are going to touch on a lot of what it can do and get started with some things that you would want to do. So first of all, I forgot, or I didn't notice there's also a link to the public page over here in the sidebar, which is nice. But AzuraCast can do a couple things. You can stream to it using software like Audio Hijack on the Mac, or Ladiocast on the Mac, which is free. Audio Hijack is paid. Then there's on Windows, there's Rocket Broadcaster. I would highly recommend that one on Windows. It's the one I've used a couple times for some stuff on my own radio station. And then there's also a cross-platform tool that's available, I believe, on Mac, Windows, and Linux. That's called BUTT, like literally BUTT. And it is a backronym, I think, that stands for Broadcast Using This Tool. So whatever. They all have different capabilities. We're not going to cover all of them today, although I would at some point like to. I have a personal mission to make a blog post on how to do this, how to broadcast to DS106 radio from Windows, because there's not a lot of information out there on that. And we've had folks ask about it. But that's a different conversation for a different day. Any of those tools, you can connect up to AzuraCast. And the other thing you could do is you can upload media and have it just play that directly, or you can tell AzuraCast to play a particular radio station and mirror it, basically. This is what DS106 radio is configured to do when no one is broadcasting to it. And if I go there right now, I don't think, no one's broadcasting to DS106 radio right now. You can say your DJ speaks blah, 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 on WFMU. That is because it is taking the WFMU stream and rebroadcasting it. So we are going to do that today, and we're going to set up a DJing account so that we could broadcast to it directly using Audio Hijack or a similar tool. So we're going to set up our DJ account first. So it says, hey, song requests. These are like individual features it has. We're not going to worry about song requests right now, but basically there's like a built-in kind of request tool, which is neat. So your audience can be like, I want to hear this song. But we're going to enable streamers/DJs. So we're going to do that. And it says, hey, you got some changes to apply. We'll get there. I also want to create a account. So I'm going to go into this thing we just enabled and go to manage, and I need to add a streamer. So if I go in here, I can give it a username. Let me call this stream account. Sure. I'm going to write some of these things down, and I'll give it a password. Very secure password.
Looks secure to me.
It definitely isn't the words very secure password. Then we can give it a display name. This just shows what the player will say. Like it'll say live and then like the thing's name. So I'll put my name in there. How about Taylor? So Taylor is live. We can put comments on there if we want to. We might want to make sure they count as active so it works basically. And one thing that's cool that I've never used, but you can enforce like a schedule. And this would be really neat if you wanted to use something like Azuracast for like college radio potentially, where maybe you had a large amount of people regularly broadcasting on a schedule. You could say this streamer has from 6 to 9 on Wednesdays this time available to them. Kind of cool. And that is all the scheduling feature is all completely built in Azuracast. So you can manage that all in here, which is really neat. We're not going to worry about a schedule right now, but I love that that's a thing. Oh, and also you can give like a little image when they're broadcasting too, if you want to. So I'm going to save that. No, don't worry about it. 1Password. Why is it not hitting save? Interesting.
Okay.
Let me try that again. Okay, weird. I don't know what was up with that. Anyway, so I made that. And this is some of the credentials I would put into my streaming software. Now, I am going to need to check one thing in Reclaim Cloud. So there's another thing to mention about all of this is that we are using right now a reclaim.cloud URL. We're not paying for a public IP address. If you're familiar with Reclaim Cloud, you may know that IP addresses typically cost $3 a month. That's what we pay for them. So that's what they cost. And the cool thing about the way we typically use Azuracast is because we have this landing page that I just closed, like this or the DS106 one. This is the public page, right? We don't actually need to map a custom domain to Azuracast necessarily. So we're not going to. We're going to use, and this is one of those things that it's documented, but I like to show this on stream to talk about sort of why. We're going to use a feature called endpoints to basically open up a special port. And we need this special port open because that's the port that your software will need to talk to Azuracast on. And ports, we're not going to go into all of what frankly, I wouldn't even know what to say, but like ports are the lanes that web traffic happens on, and those are 80 and 443 most of the time. So that's what your web browser uses, but other applications use different ports. So we have to open those special ones for non-web type things. So we're going to open ports now. If I go to the, I've got this open multiple times, don't I? Yes, I do. If I go to my instructions over here, it says, hey, you're going to see something like this as far as how you can connect to it. And it says the port provided will most likely be 8005, and here's how we make it. So we're going to follow those instructions right now. So I'm going to go to settings, endpoints, add. So it's already selected. There's only one node, but I'm just making sure that it's selected the Azuracast node. We're going to put in 8005, and I'm going to double check that that is indeed the one they want me to use. Yes, it is right here.
Nice.
And then it says protocol. I'm not actually sure. I believe it's TCP. Let me double check TCP. And we can name this whatever we want. Really doesn't matter. I'm going to just call it broadcast, I guess, and then add. And what this will do is it's going to give us a special URL and its own port that it actually wants us to use. So I'm going to copy this so I have it handy. This is my streaming account information over here. And anyone watching this live can try to beat me to it, but please don't for the sake of demonstration. I ask you. You all are cool people, so I imagine you won't. But this first part here is the domain name that it's telling us to use, and after the colon is the port. So I'm just going to actually make that its own line. So we'll be using this information. Now, again, the DS106 radio is set up a little bit differently. So if you're interested in broadcasting DS106 radio, just ask someone who's already doing that, and they'll help you get started. But this would be sort of the cheapest way to do this on your own. Save you $3 a month. So,
Nice.
Okay, and then we can basically then set up everything else as AzureCast tells us to. So over here it says, hey, you're going to use this server or IP, this port, and then you're going to use your credentials you just made. That's not true for us. We're going to use the port and server that Reclaim Cloud told us to use. So I am going to quickly, I'm going to do this in audio hijack, and I'm going to try not to break everything because we're also streaming. And I'll share my screen in just a second here. I have to do a little bit different type of screen share for this to work. Sorry, everybody. Okay, so this is my audio hijack. I am just going to grab my microphone. It's not going to be super interesting to listen to, but I'm just going to put my microphone out there, and because we're not actually going to listen to this. We're just going to make sure it connects and that it's working, basically.
Right.
And a broadcast block. And so in here, you can't see that because of how I've done this. So I need to share my screen differently again. Sorry.
God, I love audio hijack. I think it's so cool.
Yeah, it's hard to beat, honestly. Okay, I'm gonna try and make this. You know what? I should do this. There we go. Make everything larger. Great. Okay, so here's my instructions over here that I've made. And I also mentioned that it says the mount name is just a slash. So, okay, we'll put that in our notes too. So I'm going to go over to Audio Hijack, go to Setup. I'm going to change the server type to Icecast2. I'm going to grab the address it gave me. I'm going to, oh, there's a space at the end of it. That's my bad. Probably don't want that space in there. I'm going to grab the port. The user was stream account and very secure password. And the mount point is just a slash. In my experience, the encoding format when you're going to AzureCast barely matters. It will re-encode it to whatever it wants. Typically, radio stations like AzureCast are set to a lower bit rate, so a lower quality. But yeah, it seems to kind of take whatever and output whatever. But if you wanted to match whatever your AzureCast is set to, I think by default is set to 128 kilobits. So it doesn't effectively matter though. All right, so that is possibly working. So in the metadata tab, I could do things like have it capture the metadata of the track that's playing and stuff. We're not going to worry about any of that right now because I just want to make sure that this works at all. Failed to reach socket data. Let me double check all the settings here. Oops, didn't mean to do that. There we go. Icecast 2. Well, what the heck? Oh, you know what? I need to restart the configuration. It totally warned me about this on the homepage, and I ignored it.
Oh, way back when.
Yeah. Yep. So let's do that. Let's reload. We may also need to restart broadcasting too. So it brought us back to the dashboard. Oh no, the main page just looks different because it's all. I have everything super large right now. Let me actually do that with it. Okay, I'm gonna try again. We may also need to restart broadcasting. Oh,
Looks good. That was
okay,
easy.
cool. Now I'm gonna go to the public page, and this does take us. Okay, yeah, it's actually, it says we're live with the stream account live broadcast. So that is theoretically working. I'm playing it right now and hearing myself from 15 seconds ago, so that is indeed working, which is really cool. So we have successfully made like the bare minimum live radio station. I'm going to show one other thing here, and you know what? I might as well, just because why not? I'm gonna go in and grab your audio too, Amanda, so you show up on the radio too. Maybe oh wait, no, I'm not using Chrome here. I'm using Firefox.
Is it connected now?
Wait. You know what? I better not do that while also on StreamYard. Yeah, we're gonna stop for now. But this all gets very complicated when you're streaming while doing another audio thing. Sometimes if I capture audio while in another thing, that's not good news. So I'm gonna avoid blowing up our live stream here, and we'll just stop for now. So what we'll do is we're also going to set up a fallback station. So I said the other thing it can do is it can play music in the back. Like you could just upload music. Now I would be careful about that because you probably shouldn't play like music you're not licensed to.
Yeah, that's always.
But that's all very complicated in the world of web radio, right? Because if you're not making money, if you're only using this for a couple people, there can be cases where that's fine. I don't want to even get into that, and I'm not very knowledgeable about that, honestly.
It's almost like our copyright laws need to be updated.
Yeah. So what we need to do instead is we're going to set up a fallback station. So we're going to set up WFMU just like DS106 Radio is set up, and actually my own station is set up that way too. So I have to go in here, and there's already like a default playlist that's going to be playing songs that are uploaded to the media tab. I'm going to actually make a new one, and we'll call this WFMU. And we're going to make this remote URL is the source. And so it can take a bunch of different URLs. I don't remember this URL off the top of my head, so I'm actually going to log into my own station here and just see what settings I have over there, and we'll just copy it. So playlist. Oh, that's cool. I'm rebroadcasting Reclaim Radio. Neat. Which is in turn rebroadcasting WFMU. It's a whole network of rebroadcasted stations. We'll use that. But basically what you're looking for is a URL from a particular station that ends in .mp3. And you can typically find that, but you may have to dig for it. So so like in the case of Reclaim Radio, the way I must have, I could probably find it because I have access to the back end of this. But giving Azuracast this URL, it can't rebroadcast that. It needs to know where the actual MP3 lives. And so the easiest way to do this is, and I'm going to mute this just because I don't actually want to listen to it right now, is I shouldn't say the easiest. The way I do it, it's possibly not the easiest, is I actually hit F12 or get to like the developer tools. I go to network, and then I hit play, and it's going to show new network requests, and this one has .mp3 in it. So if I copy value and copy URL, this is the URL I'm looking for, and then I don't need anything after the question mark. So that's how you can find a web radio, the MP3 part of a web radio URL. So you could do the same thing for WFMU or DS106 Radio for that matter.
It's very handy.
Yeah, so let's go. I have too many tabs to be zoomed in this far on my screen. All right. Remote URL. I'm going to paste that thing we just found. Let me go back here. I believe it should be set to IceCast. Yep. IceCast Shoutcast stream. Great. And so it says, hey, how much do you want to buffer it? This is like a built-in delay. And if you put this too low, it's possible that there can be like stuttering issues. So I just set it to 1 second. So that basically our station will be 1 second behind what Reclaim Radio is playing. And I'll name this Reclaim Radio for that matter. So this is our fallback playlist. Now I can actually delete this other playlist I'm not using. So there's only one. And I think I'll now need to go to restart the station again, but we're going to double check here. It says now playing next is the Reclaim playlist URL. Let's go to the public page. Okay. Yeah, I think it will need to restart the service. Used to be a nice shortcut. Oh, it's under broadcasting. So if you want to restart manually, you can go down to broadcasting and then restart broadcasting. And that'll get us to that same page we were at before. And do this too. Okay, so the metadata is not updated at the moment, but I can hear that it is actually playing a rebroadcast of Reclaim Radio right now. So that worked. So basically, when you muck around with the fallback playlist that we just did, you will need to restart the broadcasting for that to take effect. Otherwise, I think it may eventually take effect. It's just you may need to be more patient. But
and the metadata will update on its own in time.
Yes. So metadata is honestly kind of confusing on web radio because it can be slow. It can take sometimes minutes for it to sync up, which, you know, if you're aware of music, sometimes songs are only a couple minutes. So sometimes the metadata is not great. And I don't actually think it's a Zercast problem. I'm not 100% sure what that is. I seem to have the most trouble with it actually in Audio Hijack. So I tend to blame Audio Hijack for that. But basically, if you've changed the metadata, like from Taylor Jaden's broadcast to, you know, cool jams, and then you click out of this, it will send whatever you've done to a Zercast, and you should see it within a minute or so. Other things though, playlists are really powerful. You can do a lot with it. You can schedule playlists as well. So just like you can schedule DJs, you could make like a cool jams playlist and have it play from 8 to 10 a.m. every morning or something like that. So you don't have to have just this one playlist. When you do have more than one, this scheduling, like general rotation and weight, will mean more, obviously. So that's what determines what's happening when no one else is broadcasting. I haven't played with this, but the tools are understandable if you dig into them, and Azuracast has a lot of great documentation on it. So, and look at this. There's totally a podcast section. So I wonder if this can actually just host. I think it can. Wow. Well, cool. Maybe next time we'll take the DS106 radio recordings and just put them in a podcast feed right on the same site.
I mean, that I think makes the most sense, although I love our Castopod site. But
I like Castopod a lot. I know, Mark. I did see your email, by the way, and you're having issues with the Castopod. So I'm going to be looking at that because I'm not 100% sure what happened with the setup of it. But I can highly recommend Castopod in general. And the thing I personally like is that it can run on the cloud, but also in cPanel. That's really cool. Like for a lot of people who have like a a podcast where maybe it's old or just there aren't a lot of people listening, you know, like if I made a podcast, it's not like hundreds of people are going to be listening to it every week. Maybe I'd be lucky to have a couple, you know.
Yeah.
So to put that in cPanel is a really awesome, cost-effective way to do it. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So we've got a station here. We have a few minutes, and what I'm going to do with those few minutes is talk about this main cover page and how you can make that. We're not going to actually do all the setup in 5 minutes, but there are I'm going to explain how it works. I'll show some examples, and then you'd be able to set something up just like this if you wanted to. So I said before that basically what these are is a single web page with this little iframe. This iframe is the AzuraCast embedded player. And you can actually find that in AzuraCast by going back to the main page here. I'll go back down to manage. And if I go to public pages, it says embed widgets. And you can actually design them. So you can say like, oh, it should have the history, should have the pod. This is cool. I didn't know there's a podcast one. That's awesome. It can have the schedule of the station. So there's different types of widgets. We're going to go with radio player. And then you get to pick a theme. You could have it be like follow the browser's like dark or light setting, or pick it manually. I think for mine, I have it set to, I don't actually know how I have but my example here is a dark web page, right? Because of the images. So I'm pretty sure I actually set light so that the text would, no, I must have chosen dark so that the text would be white. Yeah. Anyway, you can play with the setting to see how you like it, how you want it to look. And then you can grab this embed code over here and just copy it. And getting rid of all this stuff we don't need. This is what the code looks like. So it's just an iframe. It has the source URL for AzuraCast in it. And it has some things like it allows it to be transparent. It sets the width and stuff like that. And then you can just put this on a web page, literally any web page. You could have a new domain that you have in cPanel, and you could make an index.html and literally just paste that in. It would only be this, right? But that is an option. You could put this on a WordPress page. You could put this on a Ghost page, really anywhere you want. I will share the code for mine if you're curious. I do some kind of fancy things with it. Actually, I'm kind of glad, I don't know if Tim's still here, but it was on Tim Clark's suggestion like years ago. Because my radio station, I actually don't leave on all the time. I turn mine off. Like literally in Reclaim Cloud, I go to mine and I hit stop. So it's not running. And I wanted something that could like show a message that says, hey, the station's not on right now. Mm-hmm. And when it was on, it would show the player. So I made a little thing. And again, this was Tim's suggestion to use PHP to determine if the site was online or not and show different information based on that. And mine's really basic because I barely know what I'm doing with PHP. So basically mine grabs the embed URL, it grabs part of it, and it says, hey, is the status okay? Mm-hmm. If it is, show this web page, and if not, show this web page. So I'll if anyone wants to look at this, I just put this on GitHub, and you can look at the actual like the online.html. This I'm using a template by HTML5 Up called Eventually, and so I basically took their template and I tweaked the title, I put the header in, and then I put that iframe in. And then I put a couple other things, like I have a footer that links directly to the MP3 stream in case someone wants that. But yeah, if you're curious, you can have yours look exactly like this, and you can just edit your links. So I kind of like to listen to web radio sometimes not in a web browser, in either VLC Media Player, the video and audio player app, or there's this amazing app called Broadcasts that is available. Okay, we're going to the App Store apparently. It's a Mac and iOS only thing, but this lets you you can add web radio stations to this, and it's like a little app specifically for web radio. So I have DS106 Radio and a couple other things in that. So anyway, if you're curious, you can look at that. I also have a little blog post about this, although my blog is, excuse my dust, there's some things broken about my blog right now that I have to fix. Maybe I should need to find someone at a hosting company who can help me. But
so
yeah,
weird anyways, though.
Yeah. So anyway, I do have a blog post about this a little bit if you're curious, but the code is here if you want to look at how that works exactly. So yeah, and that's exactly it. Eric mentioned turning it off seems like a good idea to keep monthly charges to an absolute minimum. Yeah, I mean, if you're like me and you think this is neat, and you want to play with it a couple times a year, I mean, the costs of my radio station we're probably talking tens of $10 a year. It's really not expensive. In that way, Reclaim Cloud is a super good fit for it because I can just turn it on when I need it and turn it off when I don't. So we're at time, so we're going to wrap it up. But that is kind of start to finish how you can make your own online radio station using AzuraCast, getting the DJing set up, getting endpoints set up so that you can do this in a really economical way, not even pay for an IP address if you don't want to, and setting up a fallback playing station, and also kind of get you started on a custom page if you wanted to do that too. So if you all have any questions, I'll be hanging out in Discord. I mean, pretty much every day, but I'll make sure to check in today too if folks have questions. And I know there were some questions about how more about the programs you can use to broadcast from Windows and possibly Linux and Mac OS, and that will have to be its own thing, unfortunately. Oh, that's interesting. Because my station's offline. If I refresh. Yeah, there we go. That will have to be its own thing, and it's not really a great thing to demo on video. So I'm hoping to do a blog post on that. Stay tuned. But I will mention that if you are looking for an app for Windows, just because I know that's come up, I cannot more highly recommend Rocket Broadcaster. And on macOS, it is not cheap, but it's worth paying for Audio Hijack, in my opinion. It is just awesome. In fact, it's so good, I can't imagine, I wish something like this existed on other operating systems too. So
yeah.
But yeah, there's a handful of other options out there for other OSs. They're just none are as slick as Audio Hijack. But I will say on Windows, Rocket Broadcaster is super close. And I'm just using the free version. And it will do things like grab your microphone and your music you're playing and mix them together for you. You don't have to do any complicated setup. It's a really nice tool. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, we went a little bit over time, but hopefully someone found that useful. And thanks, Amanda, for hanging out, chatting radio stuff.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, and we'll see everybody next time.
Bye-bye.